Well, I looked at it and I just knew I was looking into the face of another intelligent.
The ancient world was home to many creatures that make us wonder what life must have been like back then, and one that's captured pop culture's imagination is the Megalodon. But there are sea monsters that make the Megalodon look innocent in comparison. From a beast named after a god to a mysterious creature spotted near an oil rig, here are 20 real sea monsters even scarier than Megalodon. Number 20. Dunkleosteus. There are many ways to be menacing in the waters of the world. The Megalodon was one that was honestly menacing due to its massive size and ability to eat tons of food, quite literally, without any issue. But if you're going to talk about the Dunkleosteus, then you're going to talk about a different level of menacing. Believe it or not, this is normal behavior. The Dunkleosteus isn't being sick. That's because this was a fish of the ancient world that could only be described as an armored tank with a killer bite. At 33 feet in length, it was the top predator of its time and one of the top predators of the Paleozoic era. Something that isn't said lightly because there were creatures bigger than it, but it didn't matter. It's also said that this creature had one of the most powerful bites the world had ever seen, both then and now. But how so? Well, you might know of the great white shark. The Dunkleosteus had a bite strength that far surpasses the mighty jaws of the great white. Look it up, and you'll see that it had the ability to concentrate 8,000 pounds per square inch of force on a single tooth. And as noted before, it was an actual armored fish, having plating around it that made it not only more powerful but also harder to kill. The only trade-off was that it was a bit slow as a result of all this. And apparently, there are no true descendants to this fish. We're all probably better off for that. Number 19. Mosasaurus. Now I'll continue with an ancient creature that many of you are likely to be familiar with if you happen to watch a major box office smash some years ago. Do you know which one I'm talking about? It's the original Jurassic World. That's because in that movie, there's a scene where a giant aquatic creature rushes out of the water in order to eat some fish. This was indeed Mosasaurus, and it was something that absolutely rivaled the Megalodon in terms of fierceness and intensity, because in the minds of many, it was the apex predator of the oceans that it roamed in. And if you're curious, this particular behemoth ruled about 145.5 million to 65.5 million years ago, which makes it very old and something that we should be glad only resides in the history books. The reason for that statement was that it was a creature that had evolved in such a way that it would be perfect to swim through the ancient waters of the world and devour just about everything in sight. Something that does need to be said is that this was not a dinosaur, despite the saurus name. Rather, it was a reptile and one that's honestly an ancestor to lizards and snakes, believe it or not. Number 18. Helicoprion. At first, you might think it odd that I'm putting the Helicoprion on this list, and for a very basic reason. It's because it's much smaller than the Megalodon and not by an insignificant margin. Many believe that they only grew to be about 16 feet in length, though some would say it was more like 26 feet. Helicoprion possessed the strangest jaws that a shark has ever had, but that's immaterial due to how the Megalodon was 60 feet plus, based on the fossil record. So, how could a shark half its size be even scarier than the biggest, most hungry shark out there? Well, it's simple. All you have to do is have a look at its mouth. The Helicoprion is honestly one of the biggest mysteries of the ancient world because of its saw-blade mouth. And depending on how well-versed you are in regards to the sharks and fish of the world, you'll know that there are fish that have appendages or extensions that resemble man-made tools, such as with the saw shark, but that's an extension of its nose and you can kind of see how that works. With a Helicoprion, though, no one really knows how it works at all. Scientists have been baffled at how the Helicoprion's mouth could have possibly worked, given its saw-blade aesthetic. And yet, not so ironically, the mouth is what's usually found when it comes to fossils. It's like it wanted our brains to be stopped. Number 17. Tanus. Now, earlier I showed you a very unusual big-necked creature, and here's another one. But this time it's called Tanus, and I'm going to totally be upfront with you in that this is a very weird fish, for a lot of the same reasons as the other big-necked creature I showed off. That's because its proportions are crazy. Out of the fossils that have been recovered of this fish, scientists realized that its neck was twice the size of the rest of its body. The hind limbs of the creature were said to be much more powerful than its front ones. That's not something you'd suspect for a creature that was semi-aquatic. Paleontologists believe that it was a piscivore, or fed on fish, based on the shape of the teeth and the fact that fish scales and squid hooks have been found near the stomach. You look at creatures like this, and it just makes you wonder what the evolutionary process was to get to this, because even in the science community, this thing is a straight-up weirdo. Number 16. Liopleurodon. Now for a creature that was said to be bigger than the Megalodon, which was not an easy thing to be as I outlined earlier. The Liopleurodon was an aquatic master that was said to be about 25 meters in length, a very large aqua beast, wouldn't you say? But what made this creature so special was that it was truly built to swim through the water with ease. You see, it had special flippers that would allow it to blast through the water at great speed but without making a whole lot of sound. A true silent but deadly predator. And just as menacing was its mouth, said to have very long jaws and plenty of teeth to fill them up. It was not exactly afraid to go after all sorts of prey in the water, such as crocodiles, giant fish, and more. But wait, it gets even more terrifying because this was apparently a creature that had the ability to smell underwater as well, which allowed it to track prey even easier. When you add all that up, you get a terrifying beast of a creature that could have not just gone up against the Megalodon but one that could have very easily outmaneuvered it in the water. That is scary in and of itself. Now it's time for today's topic. A seasoned deep-sea welder recently recounted a chilling encounter during a routine maintenance job on an oil rig. While submerged in the dark, silent depths, he suddenly felt an overwhelming weight pressing against his back. Struggling to remain calm, he turned around, and his heart nearly stopped. Looming before him was an enormous, squid-like creature, unlike anything he'd ever seen. The creature's skin shimmered, shifting through colors and patterns in mesmerizing waves, casting an eerie glow in the deep. As he stared, he felt himself slipping into a trance-like state, unable to move or even think clearly. It was as if the creature held him under a spell, controlling him without making physical contact. His entire body was paralyzed, gripped by a force he couldn't explain, as if the creature's very presence had seized control of his mind. After a minute that felt like an eternity, the creature released him, vanishing into the depths as silently as it had appeared. The diver was left gasping, with a severe, throbbing headache, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. When he finally surfaced, he was certain of one thing. This was no hallucination or symptom of pressure sickness. Stories like his aren't rare among deep-sea divers. Many report unexplained phenomena and strange creatures lurking in the ocean's depths. Some even suggest these beings might be undiscovered species, or possibly something even more mysterious, like extraterrestrial life. While science has yet to confirm such accounts, the ocean's vast, unexplored realms hold secrets we may never fully understand. Number 15. Mosasaurus. Now you know you're at a terrifying creature when you've literally named it after a god. In this case, I'm talking about the Mosasaurus. This was a beast that was said to be about 66 feet long, which would put it a little bit above the average length of the Megalodon, and already it has a clear advantage. But that wasn't the only one that it had. It was the largest plesiosaur and perhaps the largest marine reptile in New Zealand's waters at the time. Now, what you're going to notice about this creature right away is that its neck was huge. As I just noted, it was about 66 feet long in total body length. However, the neck alone would sometimes be about 49 feet long. That means the other 17 feet was the rest of its body. Imagine if this thing had a sore throat. All jokes aside, the creature is a little bit of a mystery in terms of what it could do in the water, given how long its neck was. A popular theory suggests that it was one that could move in the water like a snake, which might not be so far-fetched of a notion, and that might have made it an even deadlier threat. Because that means it could have slithered through the areas it lived in and gotten up to prey before they even realized what was happening to them. Could it have snuck up on the Megalodon? We'll likely never know. Number 14. The Kraken. And now we go from science to myth, and allow me to tell you a tale, one of a beast that was so large and massive few believe it actually exists. The Kraken is easily one of the biggest legends that the world has ever produced, and for very good reason. It's draped in lore but also has been claimed to have been seen by various people and sailors all over the world. Thus, the line between reality and fantasy is just a little bit more blurred than some would be willing to admit. But what exactly is the Kraken? Well, simply put, it's a beast of an octopus or squid that was said to be so large it could devour or sink ships without a whole lot of effort. It's also been tied to certain mythologies, like Greek mythology, in which it was a terrifying creature used by the gods to punish entire cities. Fast forward to the modern day, and you'll find all sorts of seamen claiming that they've seen a creature over 100 feet long with tentacles that could wrap around a boat many times over. And these aren't just tales from long ago. Some of them are even recent, including a sighting from World War I. There was even a sighting via Google Earth not too long ago. And so, if it had been real, or perhaps still is real, its size and the power of its tentacles might just be able to squeeze the life out of the megashark. Number 13. Stethacanthus. The stethacanthus is a fish that's technically not scarier than the Megalodon, but it's one that is scarier in that we really don't know why it looks the way it does. Because if you take a look at the shark, you'll notice something peculiar about it. Just look at the picture and tell me what you see. You see a shark that may appear to have an iron as its dorsal fin, and no one's really sure why it looks like that at all. But wait, there's more. The top of that fin had teeth-like protrusions that came out of it and matched something that was found on the snout of the shark. So if you don't ask, I will. Why in the world would the shark evolve into something like that? Granted, it's not as weird as the saw-blade mouth of a certain other shark, but it's still really odd. And sometimes the scariest thing is not knowing what's going on. Number 12. Sarcosuchus. Now I'll move on from a lizard-like creature to what some believe to be the ancient ancestor to alligators and crocodiles, the mighty Sarcosuchus. It lived about 122 to 112 million years ago, dating to the early Cretaceous period of the landmass now identified as Africa and South America. And since it was in those areas, anything that was near it was absolutely in trouble. Now, as for what made this creature so terrifying, it's said to be bigger than any modern crocodile or gator that's in the world today. The largest croc currently out there is the infamous saltwater crocodile, and the Sarcosuchus is said to have been much bigger and even heavier than that. Not unlike modern crocs and gators, it had a massive mouth with teeth that were so strong and a bite force so powerful, it could easily devour just about anything. At first, that doesn't sound much different from your modern crocodile. However, this was a super croc in many respects, not the least of which was the fact that it was able to actually swim through the waters at high speed due to how its body was designed. That meant that either on land or in the water it could take out prey, which makes it a bit more versatile than the Megalodon. Number 11. Godzilla shark. First and foremost, this is a really awesome name. Anything that's named after Godzilla has instant credibility in my book. But despite being called the Godzilla shark, you might be surprised to know that the shark apparently wasn't all that big, or at least not according to the fossils that have been recovered. A rather well-preserved one would be found in New Mexico, and it was only about 6.7 feet in length. But why was it called the Godzilla shark, then? Well, that's because it was a shark that was the biggest fossil found in that area, so it was a Godzilla-sized find in context. And the scientist who found it was apparently a fan of Godzilla. Standout features of the skeleton that was recovered in the desert include 12 rows of piercing teeth set in robust, powerful jaws, and a pair of 2.5-foot-long fin spines on its back. The teeth are absolutely something worth mentioning because most sharks have rows of teeth layered within them so that if one breaks off, another can take its place. But having 12 rows of shark teeth? That's the literal definition of overkill. And just so you know, it would later be renamed the Hoffman's dragon shark. Number 10. Leviathan melvillei. There have been many stories over the years about a massive aquatic beast that was said to have been a monster with no equal. It's even mentioned in the Bible as a creature that actually had to be killed by God himself. The creature that I'm speaking about is the legendary Leviathan melvillei, aka the Leviathan. This was not a shark if your mind's wandering in that direction, nor is it a serpent creature like the Bible states. Rather, it was actually a whale. It sounds kind of weird, but I promise it's true. This was, and still is, the most aggressive and powerful whale ever, one that had such massive teeth and a willingness to hunt that many other whales don't actually have. To put it in context, think of this creature as an even meaner version of the sperm whale, which are known to be aggressive in and of themselves. Paleontologists believe that Leviathan measured upwards of 50 feet from head to tail and weighed as much as 50 tons, which actually puts it on par with certain sperm whales, ironically enough. This is also where things get interesting because Leviathan melvillei was said to have lived in the waters of the world at the same time as the Megalodon, so potentially they could have clashed. With its power, speed, and size, this creature could have definitely been on par with the ancient shark. Number 9. The Atlantic wolfish. Now, speaking just for myself, anything that has wolf in its name almost always has to be cool by default. I know, unbiased, but in the case of the Atlantic wolfish, it's a fish that honestly goes by many different names, each just as terrifying as the last. That includes devilfish, wolf eel, Atlantic catfish, sea wolf, ocean catfish, sea cat, and more. Wait, sea cat? Who calls a wolf a cat? That's just dumb. Getting to why it's scary, though, that would be its teeth. They're sharp and protrude right out of its mouth, so you don't really have to guess too hard as to why it scares a lot of people. Even more, they can grow to be about 6 feet long and weigh about 50 pounds, so it's also got its bulk to back up its bite. And quite frankly, if you take a look at it, it's not the most attractive fish in the water. It's mean to say, but you know it's true. What did you think of this? Number 8. Anomalocaris. Behold the unusual shrimp, a 6-foot-long creature from ancient times that's a little bit scary in its own right. Not the least of which is that this is supposed to be a shrimp, and yet, as you can see, it's honestly quite massive. Then again, one of these would likely be able to fill up a seafood restaurant for quite some time, so we can see the potential here. But what about it makes it scary? Well, first of all, its body is something quite curious, with its flaps and other parts making a form that's odd, if not scary. This ancient shrimp, scientifically known as Anomalocaris, also had a pair of powerful, claw-like appendages at the front of its body, which it used to grab and crush prey with ease. Its streamlined shape allowed it to move swiftly through the water, making it an efficient predator in its time. The creature's mouth was circular and lined with sharp plates that could crush the hard shells of trilobites, a common prey item in the ancient seas. It also had the ability to rapidly change direction, enabling it to ambush prey before they had a chance to react. This combination of speed, strength, and armor-piercing jaws made it a true terror of the ancient oceans. This unusual shrimp also features compound eyes with thousands of lenses, which gives it extremely sharp vision. And in the oceans of the ancient world, where predators were everywhere, that's something you absolutely needed to have. Furthermore, it was also very fast, and the segments of its body had spikes on them, so in the end, it could wrap around its prey and basically spike them to death. Number 7. Adestus. Not too long ago, I showed you a shark that had a weird iron or anvil as a fin. But now, allow me to show you a shark that had a mouth that was very much like scissors. This was the Adestus, and not unlike many on my list, it's another fish that people look at and go, huh. Because, as many have projected when it comes to trying to draw out what the fish looked like, the Adestus had a set of teeth that was honestly a little bit different than usual. Most shark teeth that fall out are replaced by new ones, but for the Adestus, the teeth just kept growing in the mouth and would only push up or away the other one. As a result, the Adestus jaw would resemble a series of jagged, overlapping blades, which likely allowed it to clamp down on prey with a slicing motion. Fossil evidence suggests that these unique jaws could have been used to slice through soft-bodied prey, although scientists still debate how efficient this would have been. Some paleontologists theorize that the Adestus jaw shape might have evolved for intimidation or competition rather than practical hunting. In any case, this bizarre adaptation places Adestus among the strangest sharks in prehistoric seas, defying conventional ideas of shark anatomy. Thus, the mouth of the shark would be curved in such a way that it resembled the shears of certain scissor blades. Sadly, no clear answer to what this shark's deal was is going to come anytime soon because the fossils just aren't numerous enough to make an educated guess. Number 6. Giant squids. Now, I'm not going to be talking about the Kraken again. I'm talking about the thing that it was likely inspired from, the giant squid. That's because these creatures are ones that, despite us having known about them for decades and centuries, there's honestly still not a whole lot that's actually known. Granted, we do know some things, including that we believe they averaged about 40 feet in length, and many also think that because they live at massive depths in the ocean, they could actually be much larger than that. The giant squid is known to have long, serrated suction cups along its tentacles, which create deep wounds in any prey it grabs, leaving little chance of escape. Its enormous eyes, some of the largest in the animal kingdom, allow it to detect faint movements in the dark ocean depths, making it an expert at stalking its prey. Despite its size, the giant squid is incredibly agile, able to jet through the water with bursts of speed by expelling water from its mantle. Encounters between giant squids and deep-diving sperm whales have left scars on the whale's skin, showing that even these leviathans struggle to overpower the squid's powerful limbs. Its elusiveness and strange abilities make it one of the ocean's most terrifying mysteries, as it can strike silently from the deep. The giant squid has a beak and will also shoot ink as a defensive measure, and absolutely wrap its tentacles around you in order to kill you. But why is this thing scarier than the Megalodon? Well, while that thing is a bulking behemoth, the giant squid can get you in various ways that won't alert you to its presence until it's too late. And while it may not have been as big as the Megalodon, that's not to say that it couldn't have put up a really good fight. Number 5. Deep-sea anglerfish. How many of you have seen the movie Finding Nemo? Because if you have, you know exactly what this fish is and why it scared the crap out of Marlin and Dory once they realized the trap they were suddenly in. The deep-sea anglerfish is, by and large, one of the scariest-looking fish in the world today, and I don't say that lightly. In fact, one of the oh-so-accurate nicknames for the fish is that of devilfish because it's clearly a demon. Just look at the thing. Obviously, its claim to fame is that protrusion that comes out of its head, which is actually one of its secret weapons for the darker parts of the ocean that it lives in. This fishing rod is actually a modified fin spine called an esca, which contains bioluminescent bacteria that generate a soft, eerie glow to lure prey. The anglerfish can control the brightness, adjusting it based on the depth and darkness of its surroundings, making it even harder for unsuspecting fish to resist. Once the prey is close enough, the anglerfish's sharp, needle-like teeth snap shut, preventing any chance of escape. Its jaws and stomach are incredibly flexible, allowing it to swallow prey larger than itself, which is essential for survival in the sparse deep sea. The males, which are much smaller, latch onto females, fusing their bodies and sharing a bloodstream, a process so surreal that it's still difficult to fully grasp. You see, this fish can emit a light from its body, and that will actually lure other fish into its grasp. And then, once they're distracted by the light, it's game over. Now do you see why it's the devil? Exactly. Oh, and apparently males and females literally fuse together to mate, which is the stuff of nightmare fuel. Number 4. The Tully Monster. In full honesty here, despite this thing having a monster of a name, it's not exactly the most imposing creature ever. However, what the Tully Monster does have going for it is the fact that it's one of the most odd creatures that's been discovered, and people are still trying to figure out what the heck it is. The foot-long monsters have eyes on stalks, a jaw attached to a noodly proboscis, and other features that really make it stand out from the crowd, but not exactly in the best of ways to make it imposing. Adding to the mystery, the Tully Monster has left scientists scratching their heads, as its fossilized remains don't easily match any known classification. The creature's soft body and lack of clear skeletal structure have made it particularly challenging to analyze and categorize with certainty. Some experts initially thought it was related to mollusks or worms, but later discoveries pointed more toward vertebrates. Interestingly, its eyes appear to be unusually complex for its size, suggesting it may have had surprisingly good vision for a creature that lived hundreds of millions of years ago. This unusual mix of traits has given the Tully Monster a reputation as one of the most bizarre animals in the fossil record. However, it does get worse because eventually scientists were able to deduce that the way these creatures worked was that they were, in fact, jawless fish. Just as bad, they apparently were related to the other evil creature known as the lamprey. So when you add all of that up, I don't exactly want to face this or the Megalodon at all. Number 3. Lion's mane jellyfish. Now, some of you might be thinking that because this is a jellyfish, I'm going to say that it's scarier than the Megalodon because it's got a really bad sting. And to be clear, it does have a really bad sting. But that's honestly not the sole reason that it's on this list. The real reason is because of its size, or in this case, the length of the creature from end to end. While its bell, aka the main core body, is about 9 feet long, its body as a whole, when you include the tentacles, is said to be able to grow to about 120 feet long. The lion's mane jellyfish's tentacles are not only long but also densely packed with nematocysts, the stinging cells that inject venom into anything they touch. The venom is strong enough to paralyze small fish and cause severe pain in humans, sometimes even leading to serious injuries. Even worse, these tentacles are almost invisible underwater, making them difficult to avoid and increasing the risk of accidental encounters. In colder waters where they thrive, these jellyfish can form large swarms, creating a literal minefield of stinging tentacles for anything passing by. This creature's sheer size and drifting, stinging potential make it one of the more unnerving creatures of the deep. The tentacles of the lion's mane jellyfish number over 1,000. They're bundled together in clusters of about 150, and they can very easily detach and get left in the water to drift along and then sting you if they touch you. That's right, the thing doesn't even need to be near you to inflict harm. That's frightening, and I want nothing to do with it. Number 2. Giant sea scorpions. Now, if the name doesn't say enough, you could probably figure out that it's worse than a giant shark. The scorpions we deal with today in our daily lives are bad enough due to how they're able to just lurk around and sting you with potentially deadly venom and so forth. Their only saving grace from being all-out menaces is that they're usually quite small. But the giant sea scorpion was not small, it was, in fact, very huge. Even more, there were several different species of them, the largest of which would get over 8 feet in length. These massive arthropods had powerful claws capable of crushing hard-shelled prey like fish and mollusks, making them a dominant predator in their ancient aquatic ecosystems. Fossils reveal that their body structure was highly streamlined, allowing them to glide quickly through the water in search of food. Their sharp, spiny limbs helped them grip and tear apart prey, leaving little chance of escape. Some paleontologists even speculate that the giant sea scorpions may have hunted in packs, adding to their threat level in ancient seas. A 1-foot scorpion is bad enough, but one that's larger than most people on Earth, that's when I'm done. Though, ironically, they weren't direct ancestors to the modern scorpions that we know. Rather, they were more like distant cousins, according to scientists. Still, though, if you were in the waters when these beasts were about, you were in serious trouble. And even the Megalodon may have given pause before eating them, of course. Number 1. Blue whales. Now, I know this is a very oddball choice, but you'll have to roll with me on this one because it's also my pet guinea pig Twinkle's favorite creature. The reason I'm talking about the blue whale is simple. Its size is massive. The blue whale is the biggest mammal on Earth, and by a wide margin. While certain measurements have been challenged, we know that at least they can grow up to about 90 feet in length, while many others say that it actually grows over 100 feet, which makes it really big in ways that people honestly can't deny. The Megalodon was said to be, on average, about 60 feet, so the blue whale dwarfs it and no doubt outweighs it as well. Of course, that's not the only trick they have up their sleeves, because sharks like the Megalodon are known for their solitary nature, even going so far as to eat one another should the need arise. But the blue whales? They prefer to be in pods, watching out for one another and acting like a true community. So if you think about it, if these two ever met, it wouldn't be one-on-one per se. It'd be more like one shark versus a whole pod. And with those odds, it doesn't exactly suit the Megalodon. Of course, the great irony here is that the blue whale is endangered heavily because of illegal whaling. So if things don't turn around soon, the blue whale will be just as extinct as the former ancient shark. Take a look at all the sea monsters said to be even more terrifying than the mighty Megalodon. Are you surprised that so many creatures could outscare a giant shark that devours everything in sight? Do you know of any other creepy creatures lurking in ancient waters? Let me know in the comments below. Check out the other cool videos on the screen, and I'll see you next time.